Here's what's coming up on today's show.
If you're waiting to get back in the market, good luck, because you have to guess twice when you got out and when you got in, and vice versa. Hello, this is Mark Silverman, managing member and founder of Silverman & Associates, and I'm also a certified financial planner professional. I want to welcome you to the Saving with Silverman podcast. I'm glad you're here. Each week, we'll discuss different financial planning topics because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
You know, we always try and keep you abreast of what's happening on the crime scene. There are a lot of crazy federal crimes on the books, and we've tried to count them all, but there are so many. Because we're always looking out for you, we want to make sure you don't run afoul of the law, and you don't end up in a sticky situation. Mark Silverman, did you know it's a federal crime to use the word Scotch, Scots, Highland, or Highlands, or other similar words commonly associated with Scotland to describe any liquor product not produced 100% in Scotland? I mean, boy.
I knew Scotch was the... I'm actually a Scotch drinker. I didn't know Scots and Highlands were prohibited from being used, because otherwise it's just whiskey, right? It's not Scotch unless it's from that area.
That's
Same thing
amazing.
is true with tequila too. Has to be from a certain region.
Well, I guess
something else.
They did a good job getting a copyright on that, I suppose.
Same thing with like champagne, right? Isn't champagne from a certain region in France?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Otherwise it's not. So it's kind of, you know.
So you can tune in to the show and learn about all varieties
all
of
the
liquor
different
as
types
well.
of. There you go. Right?
Well, let's talk about qualities of money instead of qualities of alcohol.
Okay.
What are the three qualities of money that should be represented in nearly every investment plan? Things that you always make sure your clients have.
Well, I think there's three components. There's either growth, safety, or liquidity. Are the three things that each investment can have. A couple of those. They can't have all three, unfortunately. It'd be nice if you could have growth, safety, and liquidity, but that doesn't exist.
Well, a lot of people out there kind of looking for pie in the sky. They want something magical out there. But is there a one single investment that achieves all three of those at once?
Unfortunately, there's not. So there's no silver bullet in what we do. You've got to have the right mixture of diversified portfolio and different asset classes, depending on the goals. We have different time frames, things that you need now, midterm, long term. And so the longer you can go, the more risk you can typically take, but there's certain things that you can't take much risk with, such as your money markets, your cash, et cetera, for emergency funds and those sorts of things.
So I guess the best you can hope for is to achieve 2 out of 3, but you can't get all
2 out of
at
3.
once.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 is usually pretty good.
Can you give us some examples of different investments that achieve different qualities? Maybe
Sure.
Some of these 2 out of 3 deals?
So like safety and liquidity, for example, would be cash and money markets. And rates are higher, but unfortunately they're not as high as inflation. So you want to keep the right amount of cash, what we call emergency funds, which is typically about 3 to 6 months worth of expenses should be kept liquid. So if you're spending $5,000 a month, it should be between $15,000 to $30,000 that should always remain liquid. So if you keep, let's say, the minimum, which is $15,000 in that case, and let's say we're in Tucson, your air conditioning breaks, which happens sometimes in the summers, and you have to drop $10,000 on a new air conditioning unit, you need to replenish that account to keep the 15 in there. So you always want to keep that minimum in there. And so those offer safety and liquidity. Like I said, you are getting a little better rate than what you were getting a couple years ago, but you also have a lot more inflation than what we had a couple years ago. So, it's important to have those sorts of things. I think the next one would probably be like growth and liquidity, which is a diversified portfolio. And that could be, your stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, et cetera. And having a diversified portfolio, which, from one year to the next, we don't know what's going to happen, especially after last year. But over time, your portfolio should do well if you're in the right mixture for your given, goals, life expectancy, risk profile, those sorts of things.
But the safety there can't be guaranteed.
There's no guarantees.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees.
Well, what about a situation where you can achieve growth and safety, but with limited liquidity? Give us some examples of those products.
Those are tougher. So a lot of people feel annuities, give you the growth, and you hear it on these ads where they're going to give you X amount bonus and you can't lose, you can only win, and you're going to get the growth of the market with no risk. That's not necessarily true. In fact, it's not true. It does offer safety, so when the market's down, you don't lose anything. You give up a ton of liquidity. You're usually tied to these contracts for 10 or more years. So you're basically stuck with it. So liquidity is not there. So there is safety because you're not going to lose. However, you're not going to get the growth of the market either, in my opinion. You'll get a portion of it, which is very small. So in my opinion, if you want that sort of thing, I think you're better off with a portfolio, and you're not giving up the liquidity. And over time, if you're in the right mixture, I think you're going to fare a lot better. In fact, I would argue that you're going to fare a lot better in most cases. And you don't give up the liquidity, and you don't have all the fees and expenses and complications that you would in an annuity. Some would say maybe real estate or REITs. You've got to check now those because there's different types of REITs. There's non-traded and traded. The non-traded ones can be very risky. You can't really get a good value on those. CDs, like I said, rates are higher on CDs. You can lock in a higher rate right now, but it's still going to be lower than what inflation is and what it's projected to be. So just keep that in mind too, because really what you're up against is inflation.
Hard to keep up with inflation, that's for sure. And there are people out there who aren't even taking inflation into account when they think about the future, and that's a huge mistake.
Correct.
We're talking about 3 different qualities of money: growth, safety, and liquidity, here on Saving with Silverman. And Mark, do you find people often are putting too much emphasis on one quality over the others? And what is that situation usually?
People tend to favor, especially now, like I said, that we see higher interest rates with either CDs or money markets, which is great. But like I said, the big thing is inflation. That's what you're going up against, your purchasing power. And so, I see a lot more people sitting in cash, which I think is a mistake, especially, if you need it for emergency funds, that's one thing. But if you're keeping any more cash than that in the long term, you're losing purchasing power, and you can't time the market. So if you're waiting to get back in the market, good luck, because you have to guess twice when you got out and when you got in, and vice versa. Yeah. It's impossible to time. So it's time in the market, not timing the market. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people tend to be too focused on, higher interest rates right now and thinking that they can just buy a CD or money market and everything works out. It doesn't, because of inflation. Inflation's high until they get it under control again.
Mark, I know a lot of people listening to this show today may want to talk further about these qualities of money and how you can get 2 out of 3, but you can't get all 3 in one particular product. And they might want to give you a call and get on the calendar. And when you do get someone on a phone call, what kind of things, how do you open that up? What kind of things do you talk about?
Well, we start off, it's really about whoever's calling in, what's their concerns. They usually have an issue or issues that they're trying to get solved, so we'll have a discussion about that. They might have questions about our practice and how we do things, which there's a lot of good information on the website, which I'll have you give out. So we have a lot of information there about our firm and how we do things. But, it's really about the potential client and what they're looking for and what kind of services we can offer, or just even getting information, even if they just have a financial question that we can help with. It's pointing them in the right direction, even if they're not a good fit, or if what they're looking for is not something that we do. I'll try to give them the right advice to point them in the right direction to get that answer solved, so at least it gets them on the right path.
You've been listening to the Saving with Silverman podcast. If you have any questions at all about your financial situation, please give Mark Silverman a call. Again, his number is 520-333-7601, or go online to savingwithsilverman.com. For Mark Silverman, I'm Ron Stutz. We'll see you next time on the Saving with Silverman podcast.
The Saving with Silverman podcast is brought to you by Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC, based in Tucson, Arizona. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and everywhere you listen to shows. Subscribe to the show on your favorite app today and never miss an episode. Just search for Saving with Silverman to find us, or visit savingwithsilverman.com to listen to past episodes, to contact Mark, and to learn more about how to make smarter decisions with your money.
Did you know that Mark Silverman also has a radio show? Tune in to Saving with Silverman Saturdays and Sundays at 3 p.m. on AM 790 KNST.
All matters discussed on this show are for informational purposes only. Opinions expressed are solely those of Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC, and staff. All topics covered are believed to be from reliable sources. However, Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC makes no representation as to its accuracy or completeness. This show shall in no way be construed as a solicitation to sell securities or investment advisory services to residents of any state other than Arizona or where otherwise permitted. Topics should be discussed with your individual advisor prior to implementation. Fee-based financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Arizona. Insurance products and services are offered through Silverman & Associates, an affiliated company.